Welcome to Unscripted Coding. Today we're going to be working on a sticky footer. We're going to put a bit of a twist on it, but I wanted to show you guys an implementation by MD Bootstrap. This site has all sorts of templates if you're using Bootstrap. But the idea of a sticky footer is a footer that stays fixed in place. It's sticky, regardless of how you scroll. So in this case, we have this content, this viewport, and you have a bunch of content. This would be your body. But no matter how you scroll up and down, this footer always stays in place, this teal bar. Now, if you were to look at, say, Stack Overflow, their footer is all the way at the bottom. It's not sticky because it goes out of the viewport. It doesn't stay in a fixed place. Once you scroll up, you don't see it anymore, as opposed to this teal bar. MD Bootstrap also has a fixed footer for their main site, so it's interesting that you're seeing double the fixed sticky footers right now. If you look at Stack Overflow again, they do have sticky elements. They have their header is sticky. No matter how you scroll, it always remains fixed in your viewport. And same with this pop-up with the cookies, at least until you click accept. It will stay in place no matter how you scroll up and down with the content. And that's a goal we're looking for today. Now, even in an ideal situation, sticky footers are sometimes a little bit tricky to get working. You can spend a lot of time using JavaScript or CSS to make it work because sometimes it is very dependent on the rest of the content on your web page. What is there, what you put in there, what elements. But if you're using a framework like Bootstrap, they are common enough that you have standard templates, standard playbooks to make it happen. So, for example, in this case, MD Bootstrap is not doing anything really fancy or tricky with it. They are just putting a nav bar and putting it at the bottom so that it stays in place. They have a fixed bottom nav bar, and so you didn't have to make a lot of changes. What I'm saying is if you are using, say, a framework like Bootstrap, you're not going to run into a lot of problems and you can get a sticky footer fairly easily, albeit sometimes with a bit of trouble. But what I'm doing here today is I wanted to be able to put a sticky footer on any web page. Any web page, whether it's Stack Overflow, whether it's MD Bootstrap, Google, Bing, Amazon, whatever. And the goal here is I wanted to be able to inject this footer on any web page. Just write a bit of code that I can put into the console, just type it in, and it'll create a footer, a sticky footer, regardless of whether I am on Amazon or Stack Overflow or GitHub or anywhere. This makes it very, very problematic because this web page here might be using Bootstrap. This one might be using something entirely different. And another one would be another whole new concept. How do you make it so that you can actually have a sticky footer on any web page? Well, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I had always assumed that how I would have approached it is I'd put Bootstrap into whatever web page. Just have it as part of the package, inject Bootstrap, put everything else into the framework, and then put a nav bar at the bottom. So have a container contain everything else, and then have a footer underneath. Basically, put all other web pages inside a framework I'm familiar with. I never thought that was a great idea. That's why I never got around to it. But I found this question on Stack Overflow on my random browsing. This is 11 years ago, and I still think the answer here might work. You're going to take the HTML, which generally encompasses the whole web page, and then you're going to put a bit of padding at the bottom and keep your footer outside of the main HTML web page. I thought that was an interesting idea. I think that would work very well universally. And so, what I wanted to do is write a bit of code that I can put into a console to consistently put my own footer, a sticky footer on any web page anywhere. Now, before I get into starting this and seeing how I can put this into a command, how I can build this out, how I can redesign the footer, things like that, the motivation is probably an interesting question as well. Why would I want to do this universally across all web pages? Well, I have the same reason as the guy who asked this question 11 years ago, Kyle Kuro. He wanted to build a plugin, and that's exactly the same thing I want to do. I want to put a plugin that can inject a footer anywhere on any web page, inject it anywhere. And so this plugin, of course, needs to work universally and have a high degree of capability. Even more specifically, I wanted to build out that Edge audiobook read aloud highlighter that I've done a couple videos on before. I think that would be an incredible, useful tool for a lot of people. And what I want to do is start building the plugin around it. And one of the first steps is having that footer so you can create the settings, have a couple buttons exist anywhere. So let's get started. Okay, so we wrote a very simple piece of code, but let's walk through what we've actually done. I put together a sticky header. This is not at all what I advertised at the start. You see, headers are really simple to make sticky. Over here, we have basically a one-liner. You say position has to be sticky, and where it starts is top 0. So you can get a header sticky at the top, all in one line. Nice and simple. The footer, however, is more problematic. You gotta figure out where the position is. And so you gotta calculate what the vertical height is, how high or tall your footer is. You need to offset it. It's just lots of additional code. And for my personal needs, what I'm trying to do, a header works just fine. In fact, before I got to the sticky part, I thought just a plain header might work. And so, 2 or 3 lines of code, because what I want is for somebody to inject this into the web page, see some settings, make a couple changes, and just start reading, get it out of the way. And so a header makes a lot of sense. It's at the top, it's at the start of their page. They see it immediately. Once they've made their selection, presumably they're not going to need to know anything more. and you just scroll down and you read or do whatever you do on the web page, and it gets out of the way. So that's why I think just a plain header, not a sticky one, might have worked fine, but that would be boring, and so I did a sticky header here. Engadget is fighting me for it because they have their own sticky header. Let's put this here. Sorry, I did a bit of styling here, just so that you can see, you can put colors in the background. But Engadget's header is basically covering my header. And it's kind of finicky too, because sometimes it works, you see? As long as you don't hover over anything else, my header gets to show and stay. And the real problem is that a lot of web pages have their own sticky header. So for example, over here, this is Mozilla's web page. Of course, their header blocks mine. If I were to do something closer to what I want to do, which is read long text pages, they're usually better. And this is why it is dependent on what your use case is. They're a lot better because they're not going to have a header in the way the whole time while you read. So they get out of the way just like we want to get out of the way as well. You just make your settings and you're good to go. That is basically it. I'm going to be adding to this header, of course. It's not just going to say header and click, but you're going to have a couple settings, maybe a couple radial boxes and slider. And then they do things, of course. So I've set it up so that you have the HTML here, and it could be multiple lines long. And so I can start putting in another script where if the button is clicked, we can do certain things. So for example, let's see if this will work. Okay, we scroll down, we click. I don't think it did anything, so that's not great. Nevertheless, the idea is pretty simple. The real challenge is what do you need? And the header works fine. Footer is more work. But I think if you want to really polish it off and make this work the way I was hoping, a modal, which is like a pop-up, would work best. You would create a modal, have it close after you do all the settings, and you have the plain web page blank, entirely blank all over for you. But for now, I'm sticking with the header. It's simple, it's easy. I can start coding and writing the actual meat and potatoes of the document. And one day I might switch to modals. So I hope that was helpful. Really, we just did 1-2 lines of code. So that was a very long-winded way to say, aha, we had a problem. Here's how you solve it. Well, thanks for watching. I will see you guys next week.